Okay. So what is the pedestrian working group? What have you been working on for the past? It's been about a year and a half now. Um, we're basically all about mapping sidewalks, crosswalks, curbs, all the details that go into it. Honestly, the reality is not a lot of major cities in the US have detailed pedestrian data. They definitely don't have it in OpenStreetMap, and if they have something on their open data sites, a lot of times it's out of date or inaccurate or incomplete. And this is a true statement. I'd be happy to, if some people want to prove me wrong. There's certain cities out there that have good data, but the vast majority do not. Okay. So we started this pedestrian working group last year because of this need. And we started with a community survey. We're trying to figure out, what do people need to create better pedestrian data? Who can we partner with who's already doing this type of work where we can leverage their expertise? I am a geographer. I'm not necessarily a transportation or pedestrian mapping expert, but there's a lot of them out there. So we're working with those people who have more expertise than us. We did some analysis on the data to try and figure out where the gaps were, where data was good, where data was bad. We made some updates to OSM map editors to make it easier to add pedestrian data more accurately and faster. We've enhanced a lot of the documentation on the wiki, and that's going hand in hand with developing a schema, which we have, and I'll get into that next. And we're also have run into a fair amount of challenges that we are working on overcoming right now. So before I get into the schema, I did just want to put this out there. I did talk about this at State of the Map, but it's an important topic because it keeps coming up. There are two different ways to map sidewalks. One is to tag the roadway with whether a sidewalk exists to the right or to the left of that roadway. In a city where there's sidewalks on either side of most streets, that does work. However, certain parts of the cities out in suburbia, like where I live, and European cities, maybe where there's like smaller disjointed sidewalks and pedestrian ways, it doesn't work as well for various reasons. And this is one example right here that I'm showing you. You've got like a sidewalk that kind of goes, but it stops. There's a sidewalk on one side of the street. And in order to accurately map this by tagging roadways, you'd have to go in there and split the roadways at all these little awkward intersections and then tag them differently, which we think is not the best approach for various reasons. I have some of them listed here. The advantages to doing this basically is it's a lot easier. You have less data to manage, and it's directly associated with that road. However, that has it's very limited in granularity. It's not good at all in complex scenarios, and that's what pedestrian data is. It's very complex, and it can be tricky with routing versus mapping the sidewalk separately. As you see in this image, you have a lot more detailed data. You can do way more complex routing, especially for accessibility focused applications. If you have a wheelchair or a stroller or a cane or something along those lines, it's way harder to add data this way. However, you can do it incrementally. Obviously, there's the potential for more errors because you have more data, and getting things consistent can be tricky, but tooling definitely plays a part. So looking at those options, we're focusing on mapping sidewalks as separate ways in the pedestrian working group. And we've come up with a tiered schema: bronze, silver, and gold. So if your data is not perfect, if it doesn't have all the tags, if the geometry is not great, you can still map them separately. That would get you in the bronze tier, basic geometry and some basic tags. If you're going into the silver, you're going to have some more detailed tags. Gold pretty much has everything that is practical to map given the tools and the source data that we have today. And I'll just walk through a couple of examples real quickly to show you what those look like. Here's an example of a bronze, right? A router can work through this very well. It will tell you that there's a crosswalk there. It'll tell you the markings on that crosswalk. It even has a crosswalk point on the roadway there. So you know the roadway is associated with that crosswalk. But you see the geometry is not great. The crosswalk kind of extends into the sidewalk. There's a curb there. Like in this data, where would you put that curb? In reality, the curb is right along here, that curb cut. So while this is good for routing and it has some level of detail and it is separately mapped, it's a good starting point. Some places are already mapped like this, but silver is kind of like your next tier up from that. What do you get with silver? You get more detail at the point where the sidewalk and crosswalk come together. We have curb points there, as you can see. Some of these curb points have tags, whether they're raised or flush. Some of them don't, like the ones on this side. The geometry isn't perfect, but it's getting a little better. There's these little dongle things here. I think Jacob likes to call them hanging chads because we've talked about this so many times that I don't even want to. I don't want to talk about them anymore, but I am. Versus on this the east side of the street here, that's maybe a little bit better looking geometry. However, those things are in there. The curbs are in the right point. You can even use street level imagery, poor quality street level imagery. This one was taken while it was raining, which isn't going to give you the best quality imagery, but you can do it if you want to. So this is sort of like your silver tier application. Street level imagery, you can really pick up all those details if the curb has tactile surface and whatnot. And then in the gold case, which is sort of our top tier at this point, all of the geometry from the sidewalk to roadways is accurate as it can be. There's no funny, janky angles in there. You've got the crosswalks are marked. You've got whether it has pedestrian signals or not. That's a big thing. You've got some high resolution street level imagery that's fairly recent. This is from 2022. And, the crosswalks and roadways, while, it's not perfectly geometrical here, that it does follow the actual path that those take in real life. Like this is not a straight, perpendicular crosswalk to this one. And the data actually shows that. And then you have a lot of details with those. Is it curbed? Is it lowered? Can you get a wheelchair? Those types of things. So all the tags that you would want. And so the thought is you can maybe get in a bronze level and then slowly work your way up as you have time or need for more detail in your data. So lots of challenges and opportunities. We like to be optimistic. Some of the challenges are data quality. I was talking about that, right? It's hard to get consistent data throughout an entire city. You might have someone like me who has mapped really good detail around where they live, but you get like 3-4 blocks away and the data quality just goes down a little bit. Source imagery, better street level imagery, better aerial imagery. A lot of municipalities in the US pay to have 3-inch, 6-inch aerial imagery flown of their county or city or town. If you know what those sources are, if you know they exist, you should let us know and we'll make sure that those links get into the editor so you can use that for mapping. It makes a huge difference if you're mapping with 3-inch imagery versus even something that's a foot. And obviously street level imagery is super helpful as well. And then unmarked crossings, like there's really no good solution for these. If you don't have, you have sidewalks on either side of the street, but there's no crosswalk that's painted on the road. Yes, you can cross there. It's unmarked. There's a lot of situations you'll run into where you're like, oh, should I draw a line here or not? So those are not easy to solve. But the opportunities here are, bringing the community in, doing these Mappy Hours, getting people like yourselves who are local, who live in these places involved in mapping. You would know if an unmarked crossing is a crossable or if it's actually just way too dangerous and no one should ever cross there. I wouldn't know that by looking at an image. If you live there and you walk there every day, you would know. We are, building out this schema, and we're looking for people to help adopt and use the schema just so we can have more consistent data. It's going to lead to more use cases, and overall, there's going to be more things we can do with it. And then obviously we want to jump on and take advantage of all the machine learning and artificial intelligence tools that are out there, scanning images and extracting data. And while that's is valuable information to have, and we can't import it directly into OpenStreetMap, we can use it as source. We can use it for quality control. We can use it to catch, little errors and inconsistencies. And then if we can use that to make edits in OpenStreetMap, we'll eventually get there. A bunch of partners. Here's just like a small list of some of the people we've been working with. We'd like to have way more organizations here, but these are some of the people who've been joining the working group with us and really helping move the needle. Sorry if you've been doing this and I didn't include it on this slide. Yeah, and that's it for the presentation. Definitely check out the full schema. I'm actually going to walk into that right now. There's a link at the bottom. So if you go to the Pedestrian Working Group schema, there's a draft version out there. This is not the draft version. You're going to have a chart that just kind of gives the overview of what each of these tiers means, some descriptions, implementation or use cases, and then you'll go into the guidelines here for sidewalks, and then the tags that you would need to get to a silver tier, the tags you would need to get to the gold tier. And then we do have the diamond tier on here. We've been toying around with this idea. The reality is it's not necessarily attainable given the tools and information we have now. Like here's one example, the incline along a way, that's really hard to measure. Maybe smartphones can do that or something at some point. Maybe there's some artificial intelligence that can extract that consistently. Like is the sidewalk tilted this way or that way? A very hard thing to measure, and we don't feel like, while those can be important attributes to have, they're not easy to map consistently, so we feel like they shouldn't be included. But we are just calling those out in this tier. Crossings as well. Kind of getting into the buttons, traffic signals. We have for curbs, the curb height, traffic islands. And a big shout to Amy at the Tasker Center for creating this wiki. I don't know if you're on the call, Amy, but I can't show this wiki without giving you a shout out.
Thank you.
Oh, you're there. And there is a discussion tab on this, and I will show you. So if there's something on here that you don't agree with, rather than, you can go click on this discussion tag, and then you can add your comments here, and then we'll review those as a group in the pedestrian working group, and then we'll decide. Oh, Amy, yes.
Yeah, I will mention, and I didn't put the link in yet, but the discussion pages to use on the wiki are in the draft namespace.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Comment on the draft. I overlooked that detail. And then we'll discuss those as the group. And there's lots and lots and lots of different instances out here. It was very hard to sort of compile every scenario that you're going to run into in 3 buckets, if you will. But we do feel like we can sort of, if they don't fit in there nicely, we can sort of jam them in there some way. And yeah, that's all I have.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chad, for that awesome overview. Now we're going to hear just a bit from Arianna. She's going to talk about her own personal sidewalk mapping experience, and then we'll get us all into those breakout rooms.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. Thank you, Alyssa. I started mapping sidewalks because I'm a runner and I really want to know where locally those accessible and pedestrian friendly routes are. So all the sidewalks in Fredericksburg, Virginia are mapped in Stafford, Virginia. And I started doing some of the tasks, OpenStreetMap US tasks on the Richmond, Virginia one and Washington, D.C. area. Now that I'm moved to the St. Louis area, I'm kind of now representing the Midwest now and um, mapping all the sidewalks there, which is a much bigger city than Fredericksburg. And so it's a bigger task, and hopefully I can get some maybe a few people to map the sidewalks there with me. And yeah, I I really enjoy mapping sidewalks just because I'm a map nerd and it's super fun. It's a great hobby to have, but also it's super important work and something that isn't super available. And yeah, I love contributing and making that data better.